My name is Gill and I'm an organic beef farmer, suckler. I have about 65-70 cows. I have an autumn calving season and I finish everything at 2 years old off of grass. There's about 70 hectares of grassland, and then there's also some forestry, and there's always some oats, and there's turnip, ripe and kale, and that's sown in the end of July, and I start grazing that usually sometime around the 1st of November, and I should normally get to around the middle of December. The cows end up being in for 6 months most years. The calves, I am grazing them out. They're creep feeding into a shed, but then they go out every day over the whole winter, and by the time you get into February and March, they're usually out for 6-8 hours a day. It works out at roughly 1,100 bales equivalent, so some of that is grass silage in a pit, some of it is red clover silage, and some of that is grass silage that I'll bale up from paddocks that come. Just as regards the main pit silage, where possible I try and get a light grazing on that in the spring. This year it's working out fine. It happens to be the 5 paddocks that are close to the shed, and they were the ones the calves were grazing over the winter. So it meant I had them grazed, and I was lucky enough to get a reasonable bit of weather. My contractor has an umbilical system, so I was able to get the slurry out about 3 or 4 or 5 weeks ago. There was a couple of other paddocks I'd intended to add, but they were just too wet, and I still haven't got the slurry out. The plan with them is to wait a while, get the slurry on them, and probably wrap them, because they won't be ready in time for going in. For a cutting date then, I'd still be aiming for go for the last week of May if possible. I still need a bit of quality, because that grass silage will either be fed to the stores if I don't have enough red clover, or even to the cows, and the cows will have calves on them at that stage, so you still need a bit of quality. So I'm not going for major bulk. Most of my quality silage though comes from the red clover. As regards the difference between managing kind of grass silage and red clover silage, both will be wilted for 24 hours. Probably the biggest difference is cutting height. You have to cut the red clover a bit higher, because if you cut it just right at the ground, the red clover just dies out. From the point of view of the grass silage, I spread 2,500 to 3,000 gallons of slurry in the spring, and that's pretty much all that gets, and that's enough to grow the crop and keep the ground reasonably well maintained. The red clover is a bit different. Again, it's a very hungry crop, so I try and go with kind of 1,500 gallons after each cut, the first 2 cuts, but then it gets a very heavy cover of dung in the back end, and then on top of that, as I say, usually it gets 1 light mulching as well, so that's usually enough to keep the thing tipping over. Finally, just to say that I have a farm walk here. It's a national farm walk on the 12th of July. You're all very welcome. I'd love to see as many people here as possible. We'll be talking about everything from breeding to grassland management all the way through, so looking forward to seeing you then. Thank you.